You're listening to the Full Court Press with your host, Drew Duncan. Don't you dare touch that dial. Amanda Nunes. Boy, is she the topic of discussion right now. And everybody seems to have a little bit of say-so of what's going on with her. I myself initially believed that she probably had difficulty during the weight cutting process. Maybe she tried to game the system a little bit through the weight cutting process. Things have come out now where she has said that it's cyanitis. There's been all kinds of different takes and quotes from Dana White, from Shevchenko, from Amanda Nunes' trainer, and all kinds of stuff has been going on. The whole thing has just been a disaster. But I've got to say, before I get into anything, I know a lot of people have their take on Dana White, and they're entitled to that opinion on Dana White. Me personally, I think this is the best that I've probably ever seen him handle any situation ever, for the most part. And I say that because today we're going to do a segment called Say What, and it's just going to be for the whole damn show. Say what? Dana White, I want to say that he has reiterated on several different occasions that Amanda Nunes was physically cleared to fight on Saturday. Not once, but twice by medical physicians. Friday and Saturday. But I want to say the one area where I don't think that Dana White handled this appropriately was when he said, I'm not going to main event this title ever again. Now, there could be a lot of reasons to that. Obviously, since Ronda Rousey has lost the title, the way that she lost it and she got dominated, second round knockout, ever since then, you have to think Holly Holm didn't defend it successfully. Miesha Tate did not successfully defend the title after she took it from Holly Holm. And Amanda Nunes dominated Miesha Tate very quickly in the first round. She then beat Ronda Rousey in the first round. The bantamweight female championship has now had even more problems added to it when Amanda Nunes says, I don't feel right, I'm not going to fight. So while I don't completely agree with Dana White saying I'm not going to main event this again, I can see why he did it at least. There's a lot of other factors other than just this moment that have led up to Dana White making that decision. Number one, nobody can hold on to the belt. Number two, it's becoming something to where people aren't respecting the belt. And number three, it's to a point now where the main event is becoming a disappointment. You can't have 2, 3, 4, 5 instances in a row where the fight is over so quickly that the fans lose interest in what's going on. You need someone to provide some sustainability for the belt. Now, I understand that in MMA, titles change hands all the time. There's been a lot of interim champs, all kinds of stuff has gone on. But the fight game is different than any other sport in terms of 9 times out of 10, when somebody wins, it's not a situation where they got lucky. Your preparation going into a fight, at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10 determines the outcome of the fight. Your mental preparation, your physical preparation, your stamina, your diet, your weight cutting, everything that goes into it really helps determine how the fight's going to go. When you see two fighters who are very well prepared, they're studied, their film game has been awesome, they've had great sparrings, just overall good camps, like what we saw with the Nate Diaz-Conor McGregor second fight, that's when you see two guys who both had phenomenal overall training camps. That's what made that fight as spectacular as it was. We're just not getting that right now from the bantamweight. Ronda Rousey was beating opponents at one point. She had won 3 or 4 fights in a row with a combined total of, a minute and 45 seconds? Amanda Nunes has won her last 5 fights in a row. Some of them have been finished within 30 seconds of the fight. And I know some people may go, well, come on, dude. McGregor's beating people in 20 seconds and this has happened and that has happened. You can't predict everything. No, you're right. You can't. You're absolutely right. You can't. And regardless of how good a camp has gone for one guy or the other guy, even if they both had 2 spectacular camps, the real reality of it is once it begins to settle in and you see the result is one guy probably wanted it more than the other. And that was why we saw the quick knockout. But I will say this, more often than not, when you see the fights, they go multiple rounds. Usually it is due to fight preparation. Even if it ends early in the second round, you're prepared enough that even if you got dominated in that first round, like what we saw with the Rousey and Holmes situation, that you were able to carry yourself enough into the second round, regardless of how gassed you were. You did something in your training that gave you that extra oomph to propel you to that next round. But overall, though, Dana White has been very calm. He's been very collected. I think he's been very articulate, and he's made it very easy for everybody to understand his decision making. I know that a lot of people are calling for Amanda Nunes to just be stripped of the title. And a lot of that obviously has to do with what happened with Jermaine. She wouldn't fight Cyborg. Her reasons were, hey, I'm not going to defend my title against somebody that has been caught juicing before. And I've already discussed roid rage to the point where it's kind of ad nauseum now. But any of my new listeners will know that MMA is a very dangerous sport. Roid rage inside of that octagon, if that were to occur, boy, you're really in some deep, okay? Up a creek without a paddle. Roid rage is a very real thing. And so people are comparing this situation and they're going, look, we think Amanda Nunes was scared. If Jermaine is going to get stripped of the title for not defending it the way that she should, then Nunes should do the same thing. Well, and initially Shevchenko, like myself and so many others, really began to assess the situation and went, this has got to be a weight cut issue. She either didn't cut properly and it made her kind of sick and she just couldn't perform, which happens to a number of fighters. Don't believe me. Ask Chris Harris. He was really sick after he had to dramatically cut weight one time, but still performed the next night and won the fight, mind you. But then, of course, later on, we see the cyanitis deal come out. So everybody starts jumping down her throat and going, come on, cyanitis is not that serious. This is wrong. I can't understand what's going on here. We just don't get it. Well, and I understand that. So here's something that I want to give you from the Mayo Clinic. And understand, the Mayo Clinic is not WebMD. Okay, the Mayo Clinic is none of these online websites, even though there's a lot of people that think that doctors should start doing this more often. Quick background on the Mayo Clinic. They've been put in the Forbes 100 list for medical fields, and they've also been noted by the New York Times. On several different occasions, they have some of the best physicians, not just in the country, but in the world, working on their website, their primary facility, which operates out of Arizona, et cetera, et cetera. According to the Mayo Clinic, cyanitis is very common. It affects more than 3 million U.S. cases per year, treatable by medical professional, usually self-diagnosable, lab tests or imaging rarely required, short-term, resolves within days to weeks. Amanda Nunes has something that affects roughly 3 million American people a year. It is treated by a medical professional, which she did say she was given medication. Usually self-diagnosable. I'm sure we all saw the video where she had previously talked about having cyanitis 7 days prior to her first title defense against Ronda Rousey, which, by the way, she still fought in that fight, and we all saw that she won, so we know that much. Lab tests or imaging rarely required. She claims that she was told to go see a specialist. We see the opposite of that by the Mayo Clinic. Additionally, short-term usually resolves within days to weeks. In the previous interview, prior to the Rousey fight, where Amanda Nunes stated that she was having issues with cyanitis, she said, I have to get everywhere that I'm going a little bit early to make sure that in case it happens, I can treat it and be prepared to fight. So Amanda Nunes knows that she has this going on. She's already admitted that she knows how to take care of it. She knows the necessary precautions that she needs to make, and she knows that she's got to plan ahead of time. Clearly, she failed to do all those things. I spoke with Amanda Nunes this past Wednesday. She seemed okay to me, very high spirits, ecstatic, seemed to be prepared for the fight. Wasn't quite engaged in the interview, to be honest with you, but to Amanda Nunes' credit, her mother had just shown up to see her, and it was her first time in America, from what I understand. So I'm not mad at Amanda Nunes for that. Please don't misconstrue that. I'm merely pointing out that when Amanda saw her, she seemed to be full of energy. She was pretty much full of energy before the interview even began. So let's just leave it at that. Now, this is a quote that I want to read from her trainer, her coach. Critics and dumb people get together and form an opinion that doesn't exist. Even fighters saying she was scared. Amanda is not scared of anyone. She retired Miesha Tate. She retired Ronda Rousey, not to mention that she already beat Valentina by unanimous decision. How did she become scared now? Know the facts before you have your opinion. That is Amanda Nunes' coach. Another quote from him, she was already feeling it before the weigh-ins. So basically it went from all week, and as I mentioned, I spoke to her on Wednesday, she seemed fine, to before the weigh-ins, to she couldn't fight on Saturday. A quote from Amanda Nunes is, I just didn't feel like getting punched in the head, punched in the face. You didn't feel like it? Because you had something that is very treatable, that 3 million people a year in this country alone are affected by? That's not a small number. That's not a small number. Her coach would go on to say, Las Vegas is too hot. So I think that contributed to her chronic cyanitis, and the weight cut doesn't help since you hydrate. I don't want to blame the weight cut, but it definitely doesn't help. That has happened before, but we managed to come back, but it was not as hard this time. People don't understand that it's a big responsibility. You have to invest a lot to get to this position. You have to be 100%. So now the question is, what do you think? What I have simply chose to do here for the most part in today's little program is present the facts. These are the facts. Clearly, the weight cut had something to do with what was going on. The very fact that that was mentioned, I firmly have to be on the side of, I think she tried a different process. I think she tried to make herself heavier the next day, as a lot of fighters will do. They'll cut weight a certain way. They'll drain themselves rapidly so that way they can make weight. And then the next day, they'll blow up. They'll be a little bit bigger. Matter of fact, sometimes 15 pounds heavier than their opponent. It'll make them harder to get knocked down. It'll put a little bit more power behind everything that they do. Sometimes it will increase your stamina. And that's a very simple way of gaming the system, essentially, and cheating. Was that what Amanda Nunes was trying to do? I don't know. I'm just saying that those are things that some fighters try to do. And if the weight cut process affected her in that, well, then there you have it. You know, I remember interviewing Royce Gracie one time. And I remember asking Royce Gracie, what is the one thing that you want people to know about you? And he didn't mention himself. He mentioned his father. He said, my father did not raise a stable of fighters. He raised instructors. He said, we fight to prove that our style is the best. I use that quote for a couple of different reasons. Number one, in case you're wondering why Nunes' coach is coming to her aid, that is because that's part of his responsibility. Part of his responsibility as her coach and trainer is to assess any situation and decide what is the best course of action from there. Allegedly, some of this was under the advisement of her own people, saying you don't need to fight. Clearly, her coach supports that. All those statements support that, period. Coaches, gyms, and people who are right here in Wichita will understand this. JMTK, why it's such a big deal, is because these coaches are trying to prove that their style of fighting is the best. When one of their fighters is a champion, that's saying my style is better than everybody else's. The way that I teach people to fight and defend themselves and to counter defense is the best. It's the best in the world because MMA is worldwide. And understand this, that in the days of Royce Gracie, there were no rules. There were no weight classes. You would see guys fight guys that were 30 pounds heavier than them, and they knew they were going to be, and that's all there was to it. One time a guy showed up to the gym of Rickson Gracie and decided that he was going to fight him right there. There were no cameras. There was nothing. It was nothing but to prove our style is the best. That's why her coach is stepping in. He wants his fighter to be at 100% to make sure and prove to everybody that my style is the best. But you know what the antithesis of that for me is? Rely on the groundwork that has been laid before you. I don't care what sport it is. I don't care what form of art it is. I don't care if it's music, if it's painting. I don't care if it's NFL. I don't care if it's college football. I don't care if it's NBA, etc. I feel like Amanda Nunes probably could have been able to take this fight. I feel like Amanda Nunes could have taken the necessary precautions, as she did before for the Rousey fight, to make sure that if something like this happened, then she would be able to get it corrected so that way she could be ready for the fight. When I talked to Amanda Nunes, one of the things that I asked her was, and it's because Royce Gracie is from Brazil and Amanda Nunes is from Brazil. I asked her, I said, how do you feel about Royce Gracie? What kind of influence was he in your life, being that you're both from Brazil? And I think that you're both trying to accomplish a lot of the same things. She said, you know, everybody wants to ask me about Royce Gracie. He won a lot of fights, I guess. It's becoming very evident to me when I see this that I don't think Amanda was scared. I think Amanda just decided that she didn't have to fight. If she didn't want to, she didn't have to. Now, I understand that there's a lot of other things that go into this. You can't let anybody tell you what to do with your body. I understand that. Dana White said, I can't make anybody fight if they don't want to, I can't make them. But at this stage in the game, this magnitude of the situation, the level this fight is on, I think that Amanda Nunes in between fights, 7 months, which is actually fairly typical for her, may have been too much time. She probably had a little too much time to celebrate, and it affected her. I'm not saying that the cyanitis deal isn't real, and it affects everybody differently. There are some extreme situations with cyanitis that I did read about. It can turn into a lot of other things, hay fever, all kinds of nasty stuff. So I'm not completely disregarding that she couldn't have made things worse for herself. I'm not going to completely downplay it and say that it's not something that Amanda herself can't look inside and go, okay, here's what I got to do. I know what's best. It is easy to criticize her. But I think that it's easy to criticize her because when we look at all the other evidence, knowing that she had this kind of a condition and that she had done the right things before to take care of it, and she decides all of a sudden that she's not going to take those same steps, what do you say to that? At the end of the day, I'm going to leave it up for you to decide. The main rundown of this, Dana White claims he's never going to main event the Bantamweight Championship for ladies ever again in the UFC. Dana White and a host of others all claim that she was medically cleared to fight. Amanda Nunes and her coach maintain that the cyanitis is very real. But Amanda Nunes also knew about this before, elected to not do anything about it, and now this is the result. If you're going to make me make a choice, I'm going to say she could have fought, but I'm not going to say that she should have fought.
You've been listening to the official Full Court Press podcast, hosted by myself, Drew Duncan. Don't forget, you can always find me on Twitter. That's at DrewDuncan83. Of course, the official Full Court Press podcast is on Facebook. You can also reach me there at DrewDuncan83 as well. For all you Instagrammers, I am on there at DrewDuncan83. Thank you so much for tuning in.